If your blood runs orange and blue, this is the pod for you. You're listening to Orange and Blue Bloods, hosted by EJ Stewart. Let's get to it, New York.
Let's get to it is right. What's up? This is EJ Stewart. You're listening to Orange and Blue Bloods, a New York Knicks podcast hosted by your boy, EJ Stewart. We got a lot to get to on this show. Knicks coming off of a massive win on the road over one of the hottest teams in the NBA, the Atlanta Hawks. We'll break down that win and some of the commentary coming out of that game because I think that, for me, it felt a little deja vu. And honestly, one of the best ways I can imagine when we talk about this Knicks team and where they're at heading into the final stretch of this regular season. So we'll talk about this Knicks win over the Hawks. We'll also talk about some news regarding Mike Brown's strategy heading into the postseason and what his expectations are for this starting lineup. And also in the show, we'll talk about where the Knicks stand in the standings and their upcoming game on Thursday, which is a massive one. Boston Celtics come into Madison Square Garden with the Knicks right now, 2.5 games out. Number 2 seed, maybe kind of, a little bit of a pipe dream, but not necessarily impossible at this stretch. But even beyond that, with where the Celtics are and how they've played down the stretch and where they are as a new team now that Jason Tatum's been back into the fray, it will be very fascinating to see how these two teams match up when they face off on Thursday night at MSG. So we'll preview that game. We'll also get to a beloved member of the Knicks family taking a little criticism as well this past weekend. So a lot to get to on Orange and Blue Bloods, hosted by your boy, EJ Stewart. Of course, you can find these episodes of Orange and Blue Bloods wherever you get your podcasts. Just search Orange and Blue Bloods, whether it be Apple Podcasts, whether it be Spotify, whether it be, again, any streaming platform or DSPs. You can find this podcast by searching Orange and Blue Bloods. Be sure when you're there, if you can, give us 5 stars and a written review. That certainly will help us. And, of course, if you want us to watch the video version of this podcast, you can watch that currently on New Generation Media. Again, just search New Generation Media on YouTube, and that's where you'll find the video version of these episodes. Of course, you can follow me on social media. You can find me on X, EJ_Stewart, and on Instagram, Action EJ. So let's get the ball rolling. Let's talk about this Knicks win, and it was a big one. The Knicks beat the Atlanta Hawks 108-105 down in the ATL. They extend their win streak to 3 games, essentially erasing the 3-game losing streak. They kind of had a lot of Knicks fans and a lot of Knicks observers a little bit of a tizzy after they lost to the Hornets, Rockets, and Thunder. Now you get 2 wins against some bad teams with the Grizzlies and the Bulls, but now here, I think people looked at it as a little bit of a mini test for the Knicks. The Hawks have been playing some extremely good basketball, and we saw why in this game. I mean, they gave the Knicks all they could handle and more, but the Knicks were able to come out on top with a 108-105 victory. So a lot of things to discuss in this game. Number one, I was really impressed with the effort, energy, and focus the Knicks had to start the game. A lot has been made about the starting lineup and their propensity to get off to bad starts, which is something we're going to talk about more in this episode after what Mike Brown said about the starting lineup and how he views their standing heading into the postseason. But for everything that was made for how often of late they've come off to these bad starts and not seem to have the kind of focus necessary for a team that their aspirations are to win a championship, I thought that they came out swinging. They came out moving the ball. They came out shooting the ball well. They turned the ball over, which was a little unfortunate. But I think the Hawks, you got to give the other team credit too. Like, they definitely, I think, were aggressive and they definitely were disruptive defensively. But otherwise, I thought the Knicks, in terms of how in tune they were defensively and how ready they were to play, there was no issue with a readiness to play for this game. They came out and gave a really good swing at it in the first quarter, which is what you love to see to me. So I love that aspect of the game. This was a nip and tuck kind of basketball game, and I say that this felt a lot of like deja vu because this felt a lot like what I saw from the Knicks last season, and it wasn't an accident to me that Conley Towns mentioned that in the postgame, because this was one where, despite the Knicks shooting the ball really well, there was a lot of imperfections about how this game was going. They were getting killed on the offensive glass, or rather, I guess for them, the defensive glass. They kept giving up a bunch of offensive rebounds. Again, the turnovers were becoming problematic. And then you got some really great shot making from the Hawks, particularly Nickeil Alexander-Walker, who was on an absolute heater. And this is how he's been playing. Like, maybe not this good, but like, he's had a great season. He's been great during this final stretch of the season. So he came in and basically had probably one of his best games of the season this year in this game. And the Knicks despite all of those things, despite a Jalen Brunson disaster class, really, for 3 quarters, this was a really rough game, and there's been some whispers about, what is Jalen Brunson's health, and is he losing a step, and why has he been quite as offensively efficient in the past month than he has been for the past 3 years with the New York Knicks. Those whispers, I think, started to become a little louder on social media as this game was going on, and he was struggling mightily with the Hawks defense, whether it was Dyson Daniels or Nickeil Alexander-Walker hounding him throughout the game. And then the fourth quarter rolls around, and the Knicks, again, after Karl-Anthony Towns kind of kept them afloat in the third quarter with an awesome third quarter. Fourth quarter, again, became a little shaky. I thought there was a lot of Jalen Brunson pounding the ball. And I thought that the Knicks, and I got to give a lot of credit to Mike Brown, credit to Jalen Brunson, and credit to Karl-Anthony Towns. And these are the 3 most important figures on the Knicks. They made a great adjustment midway through that fourth quarter, because they began that fourth quarter saying, okay, I know Brunson struggled, but it's still Brunson time. And what ended up happening was the Knicks were getting knocked out of their actions because they were, doing what teams do. They were picking up Brunson full. They're hedging all the way out into half court. And they were getting Knicks completely out of their stuff because the Knicks weren't actually running anything unique or anything different to kind of free them open. And I forgot whether there was a timeout or whatever, but they came out of a timeout, and the next few plays, multiple times, they got Jalen Brunson on these kind of rub actions with Karl-Anthony Towns near the elbow or top of the key, where Brunson was able to actually kind of work his man off the ball and free up some space using the rub action or the handoff from Towns to actually free him up for some looks. And it ended up freeing up Jalen Brunson for some makeable shots. For a team that was guarding him well all night, I thought Jalen Brunson got into a rhythm because the Knicks made that small adjustment offensively, and they were hurting the Hawks on those actions. And Jalen Brunson ended up cooking. He had 17 points in the fourth quarter again. It was like a whole different person. I could not believe he ended up with 30 points in that game because of how poorly he played through the first 3 quarters. But that was coaching. That was if Brunson or Cat or one of them made the suggestion, but then their execution and making that switch work. And of course Brunson's got to make the shots, but it was key. And the Knicks also dialed up the defense. They didn't get deterred by some insane shots being hit by Nickeil Alexander-Walker. It wasn't like that was bad defense on him. He was just on, again, one of those heaters where you just feel like maybe this is not going to be the Knicks' night. But they made a couple of defensive stops and a couple of defensive plays, and they rebounded better down the stretch that then got them the opportunity to close it out late in the game. Now, it was funny how this game ended. Funny now. It was not funny if it was 1/10 of a second earlier that C.J. McCollum got that shot off. But that last possession where, Knicks get fouled after they hit another 3 to cut it to 1. And this is a basketball, conundrum question that me and my good brother, my real brother also, Kendall Stewart, talk about all the time. And Kendall's very much the opposite way, and I'm very much one way on this. But when you're up 1 with, let's say, less than 2 seconds left or 3 seconds left, and the other team doesn't have a timeout, is it better to make the first free throw, then miss the second one on purpose, opening yourself up potentially to someone throwing a Hail Mary and winning the game on a 3-point shot, but they have to do it off of a rebound where you can't run a play to get somebody open, or you better off just making the shot. Okay, understand that the team will then have to have the ability to inbound the ball, and they may have a really good inbounds play, but you're giving them an opportunity to inbound the ball and actually find a way to maybe get a decent shot off. I am always for making that shot. I never want to be in a situation where I lose a game because I missed a shot on purpose that I could have made. And that's what you open yourself up to if you do that. Now, it's so difficult to grab a rebound, make a dribble, and throw the ball from 70 feet away probably to win a game, but that's the reality. I'd much rather if someone makes an incredible play on an inbounds and they score and they hit a 3-pointer, then I play for overtime. Then at least I have a chance to still win the game. It seemed like there was some dissension because you saw Mitchell Robinson go into the game defensively. So maybe they are going to try to miss this. You saw Jalen Brunson doing a lot of conversation with guys on the front line. It seemed like he told Mitch, hey, you're going to guard the inbounder. So I guess that to me told me, okay, they're going to try to make this shot. But that play happens, and C.J. McCollum gets the ball. By the way, I want to point out there are some home cooking on that clock operator because the clock doesn't start immediately when he touches the ball. There's a good I feel, almost full second before that clock actually rolls. Maybe from the angle where the clock operator is, maybe he can't see when McCollum's got the ball. He's kind of guessing. I don't know if he has a monitor in front of him, but I thought that was, I was like, ooh, that was some home cooking when I looked back at it. But nonetheless, McCollum, because they're inbound the ball, he gets a little bit of a running start. Brunson doesn't want to foul him, which is smart. And he kind of does, if you remember what Devin Harris did for the Nets, probably about almost 20 years ago, a ridiculous 60-foot shot where he kind of just chest passes it quickly, threw up, and it banked in, which was, I was like, oh, God, this is the scenario where people will say you should just miss that shot, because it would have been a lot harder for him to get that quality of look if he didn't have the opportunity to have an inbounds pass. Now, it ended up being, obviously, a hair late, which is why, the shot didn't count. Knicks ended up winning this ball game. But immediately after that, I didn't get to see if anybody asked Mike Brown this in the press conference. So apologies if I'm just, there's information missing from this podcast. But I didn't see anybody ask him about it. But during the MSG broadcast, at least, it seemed like Mike Brown was pissed. It seemed like, and I'm pretty good at reading lips. I thought I read his lips saying something along the lines of, "That's why you miss it." I thought that's what he said. Again, I could be wrong. But either way, he looked really pissed. And I can't imagine he'd be pissed like a guy made a lucky shot. Like, this, why are you so angry? I think he was angry because I don't think he wanted Knicks to execute that way. And perhaps this was, whether the players just went rogue, whether this was his assistant coaches, maybe his staff members saying, hey, this is how we should play this. He didn't seem happy with that result. So I don't know what that means, because the Knicks will almost certainly be in that kind of scenario again in the playoffs, because all these playoffs games are close, and this kind of thing that comes up. So I'll actually be very fascinated to see what happens if that does happen again. But nonetheless, the Knicks do win. Jalen Brunson, becomes the hero of the game because of how he played in the fourth quarter. But there are a lot of other unsung heroes. I really thought Mitchell Robinson, who was given the team defensive player of the game award, was exceptional. His rebounding, his shot blocking, his overall defensive anchor play, his hustle play. He hurt his hand on diving for a loose ball that gave the Knicks a run out, but it was a huge play in the game, a huge momentum shift in the game, and he was able to kind of stay, and it seems like he's fine. Mitchell Robinson was phenomenal. I thought Josh Hart, for as invisible as he was, I thought he did make some really tough, necessary defensive stops on Nickeil Alexander-Walker down the stretch, so I think he deserves a ton of credit. And I want to go back to that third quarter, because the third quarter could have been scary hours for the Knicks, given how poorly they were playing at that stretch. It seemed like what we expect from them in the first quarter is how they were playing in the third quarter. They'll start that starting unit. And then Karl-Anthony Towns, who had 3 free goals in the first half. This is one of those here we go again deals where it's like Cat is nowhere to be found. He took over the game. He was completely overwhelming Onyeka Okongwu. Between the 3 ball, between the ability to drive to the basket. He wasn't getting stupid fouls. He was getting to the line. He was an absolute terror. And he made some really good passes during that stretch, too. He pretty much saved this game. This could have been easily a 15-point loss, I think, if Karl-Anthony Towns doesn't have the third quarter that he had. He was absolutely phenomenal. So, there are a lot of, regular heroes and heroes that are pretty obvious, but there are a lot of unsung heroes in this win, too. But this was nonetheless a great game. I want you guys to hear from Karl-Anthony Towns, because like I said before, he said what I was feeling, was that this was a tough, gritty win, and one that felt very familiar.
Man, just discipline, execution, experience. Tonight reminded me a little bit of last year, man. We found a way to get it done. That team is really good, man. They're going to be a problem for whoever they play in the playoffs. But, man, tonight was ours. We found a way to get it done. We found a way to execute in the end, and we found a way to stop the bleeding. And they're a hell of a team, super talented. Nickeil Alexander-Walker, of course, I know him from Minnesota. I know what he could do. But this was a team effort. We found a way.
Yeah, that felt like the Detroit series. Like that game felt like those games on the road against Detroit. And this was not your typical Knicks takeover, State Farm Arena kind of game in Atlanta. The Hawks have had their fans re-engage with this team in a major way. There were plenty of Knicks fans in there, but that was a Hawks crowd. That felt not hostile, but active. Definitely an active crowd that was definitely ready and willing to root for their Hawks. So that felt like a tough environment to get a win out of, especially given how well they were playing. Again, if you haven't been paying attention to the Hawks, maybe that was your first time saying, okay, let's see what this new look Hawk team is all about. I think you have to come away really impressed. You're like, man, I mean, we know how good Jalen Johnson is. He's an all-star, and he's one of the probably one of those young star players that probably doesn't get talked about enough as being one of the best young players in the NBA. But I mean, you combine him and what Nickeil Alexander-Walker has become. They're a tough tandem, and they are athletic. They're quick. Quinn Snyder has them playing a brand of basketball that fits the team, I think, appropriately. And I agree with Karl-Anthony Towns that I think whoever they face in the playoffs is probably in for a tough series, because that's not going to be a team that's going to be able to have problems guarding you, because they have very good, multiple athletic guys in the backcourt. And they have a do-it-all four-man who's essentially a walking triple-double. So as long as Nickeil Alexander-Walker doesn't, turn into a pumpkin by the time playoff time comes around, which I don't have any reason to believe that's going to happen, this is going to be a very good team come a couple weeks from now. So this was, I agree, an impressive win, a win that felt a lot like last season. And I kind of tempered my expectations for what I was going to see from the Knicks in this final week of this regular season. I said this, I was actually on, it's a good chance to plug, if you want to check out the New York Got Game podcast, hosted by Dexter Henry. Shout out to the great Dexter Henry. We're certainly going to have him on Orange and Blue Bloods at some point soon, too. I was on there for the last episode they did we recorded on Sunday, came out on Monday. This was prior to the Hawks game, but there's a lot of, future stuff talking about the Knicks, so it's a good one to, watch, or listen to, even if you obviously don't have the commentary from the Atlanta Hawks game. That can be found, obviously, on the New York Post Sports YouTube page, and obviously searching, New York Got Game podcast, wherever you get your podcast. But I kind of said that, prior to that, I was like, I'm not sure how, I'm going to take away so much from, the wins and losses of these games. I kind of want to see the Knicks just kind of play pretty good basketball. I think the team kind of is who they are. It's now going to be about when the playoffs come around, will they be able to, with their flaws, with the things that have plagued them, will they be able to overcome those things in the postseason? It's not going to be about, fixing them or just turn on a switch and all of a sudden all our problems are gone. That's just not going to happen. This is who the team is. It's still one, I think, capable of doing a lot of great things, but these pitfalls that we've talked about with the team all year, they're just there. So it's just a matter of, are they going to be able to overcome those things? Now, it came in a win results. That makes you feel better, but this is kind of exactly what I was looking at. I was like, yeah, this was great. You saw some of that pitfall. You saw some of the struggle, but you know what? They figured it out in a way that, again, at times during this season, it felt like they hadn't. So I was really impressed with this Knicks win. I was really impressed with the overall effort. It felt like one of the better Knicks wins in the season, because the way that game was going, especially in the third quarter, it felt familiar in the worst ways of this season. It felt like, okay, this is what we've seen. A road game, very good team that's super hot. Now they got the ball rolling and they're feeling confident. Knicks kind of just gonna say, all right, we'll let this one go. They didn't let go of the rope with this one, and they had to really, really earn it down the stretch, and it took them defensively making some key stops in order to do that, and they found a way to get it done. Here was also Karl-Anthony Towns. The last sound was from MSG. This is from Peacock last night, because the game was also on Peacock. And this was Karl-Anthony Towns talking about, that he was very happy with the team's play last night, but the team still does need to get better, and that these last few games, a few practices, he takes as very crucial for this team heading into the playoffs.
I think we did great tonight. I don't think we showed the best version of ourselves, to be honest, and I think we still got a lot of work to do, but we got these last games, these last practices to get it all right, and like I said, be ready game one. But right now, the playoffs been started for us. We need to build on our habits and standards since 10 games ago, so we're heading in the right direction at the right time, but we got to continue to trend in that direction, because we got some amazing opponents coming up.
There's no question about that. It's the right thing to say, and I like the approach. One thing about this game that was interesting, is becoming an interesting trend right now, is this rotation that's being set for the playoffs is kind of very different from what we've been seeing. And I know what I told Dex when I was on New York Got Game this week was, I also feel like a lot of this is still very malleable and still very flexible from game to game. But this was a bench unit that saw Deuce McBride, Mitchell Robinson, Landry Shamet, and Jordan Clarkson play the only minutes on the bench, which meant some guys that had been fixtures on the Knicks bench for the last few months did not play at all. DNP CD for Jose Alvarado, DNP CD for Mohamed Diawara. I think this is the unit that you're gonna see that's gonna be running the show for the Knicks coming off the bench in this upcoming playoffs. I think to start at least. I definitely think there will be games where Jose Alvarado is going to be thrown in there because he feels like the Knicks need a spark. I think there'll be games where Mohamed Diawara is going to be thrown in as well because they feel like the Knicks need a spark. But I believe these are the 4 guys that are going to be given the first crack at being the Knicks bench unit for this postseason. And, Jose Alvarado, by the way, Mike Brown shouted him out saying that he was great on the bench in terms of being encouraging. You can see it in the game. You can see, like, every time they come out timeout, he was the first guy slapping 5 and giving everybody love. And then, after the game, he said that, he was saying a lot of encouraging words in the huddle and was really engaged in the game. And Alvarado said, in the post game when they asked him about it, he said, listen, like, I'm happy to be here. I'm playing for my hometown team. I came in and it was a great start and how I started here. He's been very honest about how he has struggled. And there have been games where I feel like his offense has not allowed him the opportunity to have the kind of impact on the game he's typically used to having. And he said, listen, it was only down from where we were when we started. When I was, remember he scored 26 points against the Sixers right for the All-Star break. So he said, I know my number is going to be called at a certain point in time, and I will be ready when that happens. And I think that speaks to me, and then maybe a slight difference for Mike Brown as well. That sounds to me as if there's been a conversation that's been had. Which, remember, these are maybe small things, but with Tom Thibodeau, that was one of the big things that people talked about. It was one thing I didn't quite think was a huge deal when people complained about the issues they had with Tibbs. But it was like, when, Kemba Walker was benched, why wasn't there a conversation? Well, this guy isn't getting playing time, whether it be, Cam Reddish or someone else. Well, there's no communication with the coach. And that was one of the things that was mentioned as a problem. And that Tom Thibodeau's communication style was inadequate. And I think it's also one of the reasons why he's, once again, not the coach anymore. Jose Alvarado's disposition, his belief that he's going to play again, gives me the sign that this is a different coach who is approaching this differently and has probably talked to Jose Alvarado saying, listen, Deuce is back. I think we need his offense. So, and now Landry Shamet's now back too. We're going to go with that being the backcourt for the bench unit. But, like, the playoffs are the playoffs. Games are going to be very sporadic. Different opponents will need different challenges from different series, and you will play again. And I think he will play again. I think it's important that he's part of this team. Like, to be honest, I don't know if I would have taken him completely out of the rotation because I don't love Deuce McBride running the point. I just don't think it's really... I don't think he's a natural point guard. I think it's not really his strong suit. I don't think it's his natural fit. So I don't really love him playing point. But I think because of the struggles Alvarado was having, I think, if you're choosing between him and Jordan Clarkson, I think they feel like Jordan Clarkson probably has a better opportunity to catch fire and bring them something offensively. So I think they go with Clarkson. And also Clarkson, a little bit more size. And he has never been a good defensive player, but he's been a good defensive player in this last 3-4 week stretch where he's been given a second chance trying to crack the rotation. It seems like he earned his spot. I think the last few games have been a little shaky, and I think that his spot in this rotation is a little shaky. But for now, it's going to be Clarkson and Shamet, along with Mitchell Robinson coming off the bench, it seems like. So, Knicks, again, win this one, 108-105. Last thing on this game, that again, talking about this team and their identity. I was asked by Dex, what do I feel like their identity is? And I said, this is probably... maybe it's kind of a double-edged sword. I don't necessarily mean it as a negative thing, but their identity is Jalen Brunson fourth quarter magic. Like, that's it. They're pretty good defensively. They're pretty good offensively. Like, they're among the top teams. Do I think that they're elite defensively or elite offensively? No, I would not say that. I think they're good on both ends. If you want to say that their rebounding is like a big part of their identity, like their offensive rebounding is their identity. You could sell me on that too, but I don't know if that's something you hang your hat on and say, okay, this is why we're gonna win a championship. So I said it's Jalen Brunson fourth quarter magic. That, like, regardless of how a game could be going, that we get to the fourth quarter, it only feels like you have a cheat code because you have a guy who executes so highly in those crunch time moments. And in the playoffs, maybe during the regular season, that feels like okay, what does that really mean? In the playoffs, it does feel very good to have that guy be your ace in the hole down the stretch. But, the one thing we have said about the Knicks teams in the past, this is probably prior to the Karl Towns trade, was that toughness was part of their identity. That was part of what Tom Thibodeau brought to this team. And I think there's been a feel that has kind of escaped this team when DiVincenzo and Hartenstein and Randall and the guys that left this team 2 off seasons ago, that we lost a lot of that with those guys going out. I thought it was interesting hearing this sound. This is Jordan Cornette, who was doing the game last night for Peacock. Man, part of me is like, should he? I mean, it's on the court, so he can say whatever he wants. But a lot of things kind of, I was surprised that he said this. I'm glad he did though. But this is Jordan Cornette, who noticed something and heard something as players and coaches were leaving the court last night that I thought was very telling.
Hey Grady, one of the Atlanta assistants walking off, who will remain unnamed, said they're just a little tougher than us right now. Speaking about the Knicks.
I'll be honest, I'm telling you guys, I got a little tingles hearing that. I gotta be real. I got a little tingles because I'm like, oh, yeah, that is what we heard about this Knicks team when they were beating up on Philadelphia, or they were beating up on Cleveland, or they were beating up on some of these other teams in the playoffs. Was that, like, man, like, whatever you think of talent, like, they just are tough. They're just a tough physical team, and they're extremely mentally tough, and you just can't kill these guys. Like, they're just a relentless kind of squad. And that was, again, the Tom Thibodeau identity that this team formed. And I've actually pushed back on a lot of people who I feel like didn't give the Knicks enough credit for showing toughness. At the end of the day, the Pistons basically came into the series last year in the first round and immediately made it a referendum on the Knicks' toughness. They said that they were the bad boys. They said that they didn't think that Karl Towns liked physicality, and that they were going to come in and push people around. And they played that way. They played like a team that wanted to try to fight and wanted to try to scrap and claw and push and shove. And they tried to make it a referendum on the Knicks' toughness. And the Knicks got them out of there. And then the Boston Celtics, while I don't know if it's necessarily about a physical toughness thing, it was very clear, again, to do what the Knicks were able to do, being down double digits, 20 points in those first 2 games, and to come back and win. That spoke to a level of toughness. I think this team has toughness. Is it the most tough team ever? I don't know if it's necessarily the same squad that they had a couple years ago, but it is a tough team. And to hear another playoff team who's kind of going through, this is the first go around with this group of Hawks. Obviously, they've had other teams with Trae Young that have made the playoffs, but this group with like Nickeil Alexander-Walker and Jalen Johnson as their star player, and like a lot of different new faces. This group with this coach, it's a little bit of a different feel. So they're trying to get a feel for what it's like to beat these top teams. I would feel good if I'm a Knicks fan that you hear a Hawks coach leaving the court and being like, that team is just tougher than us. It's like, well, the other team the Knicks have been able to dispatch, they were saying the same thing about the Knicks when they faced them. So credit again to the Knicks for, I thought it was a really important, really big win against the Atlanta Hawks. Last night, this is Monday night that they beat the Hawks, for whenever you are listening to this podcast. I want to move on to something that I think is important too. So before this game, Mike Brown, of course, does press conferences before every game, and he was asked about, now that we're getting close to the playoffs starting, we're in the last week of the regular season, what is your anticipation of potentially any changes to the starting lineup? He essentially said there are no anticipation of that happening. So Mike Brown, this is a post. I have the tweet here from Stefan Bondi, who was there along with the other Knicks beat writers, who said, Mike Brown said he expects to stick with the same starting lineup moving forward and into the playoffs. He said changing lineup has been discussed, but he wasn't close to acting on it. I heard there was some discussion of bringing Landry Shamet into the starting lineup. So right there, you hear from Bondi that Mike Brown says that he's not looking to make any changes to the starting lineup heading into the playoffs. There were conversations apparently in that Shamet was the guy that would have replaced somebody. I assume that's Josh Hart, but we don't know. He didn't illustrate in terms of where it was. And Mike Brown say that they didn't get that far down the road, so maybe it's kind of a moot point. This is a little concerning for me. I do not think that this starting lineup, though I will admit They came out and they played the right way and with the right intensity. Again, they have turnovers, but mistakes happen. It's basketball. They're not gonna play perfect every time you come out. But otherwise, the things that they can control, like energy, physicality, focus, it was all there in this Hawks game against a team that usually comes out red hot and has been great to start games recently. So maybe that's a good sign that the Knicks can kind of turned up the screws in terms of like their focus coming into this final week because the playoffs are about to start, and this will be the starting lineup. But it just really gives me concern because what I fear will happen at some point is what happened last year. Tom Thibodeau was notoriously rigid with the starting lineup. It was a unit that has just shown pretty bad returns, particularly for how they start games, and it was hurting them in the playoffs. And Tom Thibodeau, a trend that we saw in the regular season occur, never at any point in time would say, okay, you know what, let's tinker, let's maybe change things up, let's see if we can get another lineup in here. Maybe we'll find some found money here, and then we'll realize, oh, you know what, actually it makes sense to have Deuce starting or whoever else starting. Thibodeau was rigid and never wanted to do that. Knicks starting lineup became the story of the playoffs because they kind of won in spite of bad starts in the first round against the Pistons. And against the Celtics, again, bad starts against the Celtics, being down by 20 points in these games, and they found a way to win late. But the Pacers series, again, became very obvious with these really rough starts that, hey, like, what are we doing? Like, the starting lineup is killing them, and they're not playing well together. And now they may lose the series because they're playing the most minutes. And that was when, whether it was Tibbs or even Josh Hart, it sounded like, may have came in and said, hey, listen, I got to come off the bench. Either way, finally a change was made. What concerns me is that you're going to see deja vu from that standpoint. That's not deja vu I want to see, which is you're playing in the playoffs and you run into some kind of level of adversity, which every team is going to run into. Even the Thunder last year at one point were down in the series. They were down against Denver. People forget about that. And Shea had the famous, grinning as he's leaving the court as the Nuggets lose Game 3. As the Thunder lose Game 3 to the Nuggets in Denver. I think that we're looking at something with the Knicks where I just worry that I don't know when it's going to happen. I don't know. I'm hoping they don't have too much adversity where they're down 0-2 in the series or down 3-1 or something crazy. I don't want them to be searching for something that they haven't really tried during the playoffs. Like, to me, it would be one thing, especially for the regular season. It'd be one thing if they had tried a bunch of things during the regular season to see, okay, let's see what Shaman looks like in the starting lineup. Let's see what Mitchell Robinson looks like in the starting line. Let's see what Deuce McBride looks like in the starting line, right? Like, it would have been interesting, and I would have felt better about saying we're going to go with this unit had they had given other lineups with everybody healthy. There have been times where those guys had to start because other guys have been out. I mean, with those guys healthy, with everybody, ready to go. I don't feel great that, like, they didn't give those really any serious looks to see how that would look like for the team, and then they're going to run into a playoff series where maybe they have no choice but to say, okay, well, we're down 3-1 now, and the starting lineup's getting killed, so all right, Landry Shaman go in there and save the season, or, Mitchell Robinson go in there and save the season. Now we got to figure out how that affects the rest of the team. Like, that's essentially what happened against the Pacers. They go down 0-2, and they decide, okay, we got to make changes to the starting lineup, and we're going to start playing, homeboy, who I can't remember, Wright. Like, we're going to start playing these guys who haven't played all season, guys that haven't started all season, but we got to just shake things up because we're going to get swept if we don't do something else. I don't love the idea that desperation comes in the postseason when you're just throwing things on the wall. And there were some things about that and aspects of it that worked that they did when they did those things. But that's not ideal. So look, it's too late. Like, the reality is you can't say, okay, you know what, now we're going to play around the starting lineup in the last week of the season to fix it. No, this is something that should have been done weeks ago. Maybe the Knicks were playing too good. And I said that, I might have said that with Dax, or maybe I said this on the show, I don't remember. But maybe they were playing too good because they hadn't lost 3 games in a row since that terrible stretch to start the new year. That maybe it didn't make sense to make a change to the starting lineup while you're winning all these games. But I do feel like while he could say, okay, we're not going to make any changes, he doesn't anticipate those things. I've just seen the starting unit have the struggles that it's had now for 2 years. So I expect that those issues will probably also again come up in the playoffs. Again, could the Knicks overcome it? Sure. It turns out that unit is also a great closing unit. We talked about that in the last episode of Orange and Blue Bloods. But I do feel like it was a missed opportunity for the Knicks not to give other lineups some looks. I do believe that Landry Shamet is a much better fit in the starting lineup as currently constituted if you replace him with Josh Hart. He's someone that they can't leave open. He's someone that they can't switch centers onto because he's too adept as an offensive player. And I actually think he's slightly better on the ball defensively than Josh Hart is. He might not as strong, and maybe he doesn't have the same versatility with Josh Hart, where Josh Hart can guard some power forwards. But in terms of an on-the-ball pest defensively, he's one of the better guys the Knicks have. So I think that's a mistake, but it is what it is. Again, this is where I've complained that I feel like the politics of the team have not necessarily allowed them to maybe do what has always been right for the team. Josh Hart can just say, I can't be a bench player playing 20 minutes a night because I can't provide the kind of impact you want. And he can just say that, and we say, okay, well, I guess we have no choice but to start him, and it doesn't even matter what the rest of the ramifications are for the rest of the team. And, it probably sounds like I'm really banging on Josh Hart here. I don't mean to. It's just, I think he's the obvious answer for the guy who should come off the bench. If you're asking who should come off the bench among the guys that are starting, he just seems like the obvious answer. I just think there's going to be a point potentially where we're saying, okay, who are we starting for Josh Hart for Game 4 of this series where we're down 2-1 or something like that? And that's just not a place you want to live in where, again, you're throwing things against the wall. It'd be one thing if you actually had opportunities to try this out. And it's not like they haven't had any opportunities because OG has missed some games. Obviously, Bridges has played every game, but Jalen's missed some games. Cat has missed some games. Hart maybe missed a few. So it's not like they haven't had any of these guys get any starting run, which is, I guess, a good thing. But knowing, for someone like Josh Hart, or if it was Mikal Bridges, doesn't matter who it was. What is their impact like come off the bench? How do they fit with the bench unit? What are they bringing to the table? Them not getting those reps, I think is an issue, and someone that's going to be hopefully not one that's a fatal flaw for this team, but it is one I think that needs to be pointed out. But Mike Brown saying right now that the Knicks do not anticipate at this point in time changing anything to the starting lineup as we head deep into the end of the regular season and as postseason starts to get underway. Again, this is Orange and Blue Bloods, your boy EJ Stewart. Again, if you like this episode, you like this podcast, talking Knicks ball, head over to Orange and Blue Bloods wherever you get your podcasts, and search Orange and Blue Bloods and you'll find the show. And again, if you can, while you're there, make sure you give us a like, or rather 5 stars if you can. If you give us a review, we greatly appreciate that. And make sure you subscribe to the channel and press also auto download on as well. All those things help support the podcast in a major way. So, a couple of things here before we get out of here. Mike Breen, beloved member of the Knicks family. And people know how much I love Mike Breen. Mike Breen, I always tell the story that he was my former youth basketball coach. I was playing for the Long Island Lightning Development Program, and Tim Capstraw, the color voice of the Nets on the radio for the Nets radio network in WFAN, and Mike Breen, who's of course the voice of the New York Knicks on MSG, and really the voice of the NBA, really, if you think about it. Mike Breen was my assistant coach. So I actually got to know Mike Breen a little bit when I was a kid, and he was a just like he is on TV, just like people who have known him in the last few years that talked about him. He was an absolute gentleman back then as well, absolute great guy, and it was awesome having him, and getting to know him for one summer. It was amazing. So I love Mike Breen. So it's always tough whenever he faces criticism. It's always tough when I see Knicks fans or any fans getting after Mike Breen because he's a gem of a guy, it seems like. And he kind of, I'm a little surprised at how much people jumped on him, but he got jumped on a little bit for some comments he made. Now, this was during the Bulls game that happened on a Friday. Again, Knicks are on a 3-game winning streak. They got to 2 games after they beat the Chicago Bulls in embarrassing fashion. I mean, the Bulls didn't even show up. This is what we have with these tanking teams, just not even trying to win these games, and the Knicks just bludgeoned them. He was Mike Breen during the broadcast talking about how he could not fathom why Knicks fans are approaching this postseason as finals or bust.
There are many Knicks fans, and many in the media, and many within the organization who feel that this season would be considered a disappointing one if the Knicks don't make the NBA Finals. How about that?
Unequivocally.
If that doesn't show you tremendous progress to go to the point where a non-finals appearance is a disappointment, how many years where it was considered a huge success if they even clinched a playoff berth?
I mean, that's not wrong. He is right. It is astonishing that this is where we are. This is a team that really, when we talk about championship aspirations, we didn't say anything about championships since this guy was playing. Allen Houston, making shots like this against the Miami Heat in '99. Even that was obviously a kind of unlikely run to the finals as an 8th seed. But that's the era of basketball you're talking about when we talked about, all right, Knicks, can they finally do it? Can they get over the hump? Can they win an NBA championship? You're talking about late 90s Knicks basketball, or early 2000s Knicks basketball, not anything of late. But that is where, especially because of how bad they were essentially the worst organization in the NBA. But that is not where they are now. And that comes with more expectations. That comes with more pressure. And, Breen there kind of can't understand how fans, despite what has been done with this team, can sit there and say that, well, if it's not finals, then it doesn't mean anything. He was more from Knicks play-by-play announcer Mike Breen.
Obviously, a championship is what everyone wants, and that's the goal. But just remember where the franchise was before Leon Rose arrived. And Leon Rose and his staff have done a tremendous job. And then you think about some of the play, like Julius Randle was a big part of the turnaround. Tom Thibodeau, a big part of the turnaround. And, of course, Jalen Brunson, a key figure in turning this struggling franchise around. It's amazing, and sometimes it's easy to forget there were a lot of dark years, and now that blows me away. Where it'd be a disappointment if they don't get to the NBA.
Yeah, I mean, the reality for Mike Breen is, while all that can be true, the franchise is giving you those pointers that this is championship or bust. Like, at the end of the day, when you think about where you are, the Knicks are in a situation where they went to the Eastern Conference Finals last year for the first time since 2000, and they fired their coach. They fired Tom Thibodeau. He had accomplished something that had never happened before in the history of the organization, and the organization decided that what he accomplished with the team last year was not enough to keep his job. That's the reality. So when you have the firing of Tom Thibodeau, plus the owner of the team, James Dolan, who of course also owns MSG Networks, going on to WFAN, the place where I work, WFAN New York Radio, on the Carton Show with Chris McMonagle, and he says that not that he hopes that they get to the finals, that he expects that they get to the finals, that he expects that they win a championship. That's the expectation that was set by the owner. We could argue about whether or not the owner should be setting expectations that way, but I don't think that at that point you can say that it's out of line for them, the fans, to take their cues from the organization, where their words, literally from the owner, is saying that we expect the title, we expect to get to the finals, and their actions, given who they decided to replace as part of the team, because they did not accomplish their goal of winning a championship last year, or getting to the championship last year. It's hard not to sit here and say that anything less than a championship is a disappointment. Because that was the case, then what was the whole point of firing Tom Thibodeau? Tom Thibodeau did a good job. Tom Thibodeau had won a ton of games. He brought the Knicks out of poverty. Like, I criticize Tibbs a ton. I'd never have a problem giving Tibbs the credit he deserves. He deserves a ton. Why fire him if championship wasn't the goal? If you don't then push championship or bust as the narrative? And, it'd be one thing. And this is where, again, I don't really care that Leon Rose never speaks to the media. Would I like him to? Sure. It create more, being real, it would create more content for people who talk about the Knicks, obviously. It would create more context for us trying to understand what they're trying to do. It would be nice if Leon Rose had a press conference every now and then, or did an interview every now and then. I don't particularly care if he does or doesn't, though. Like, I don't hold it against him at all, and I don't lose sleep that he doesn't talk to these guys. I just don't. But this is the kind of double-edged that sword that comes with such a media blackout when it comes to public commentary about the team. If Leon Rose, after they fire Tom Thibodeau, say, hey, listen, at the end of the day, like, we're not firing Tom Thibodeau because he didn't get to the NBA Finals. There's all these other issues that we felt like it just made more sense to, change the coach. Or if he comes out and says, hey, listen, like, we know how hard it is to get to the NBA championship. We don't feel like it is our right to be there or our destiny to be there, that it takes hard work, and we know that just changing the coach doesn't mean that a championship is guaranteed. Like, if he says those things, which is probably, you would think some of the things that probably would come out if you did a normal press conference with Mike Brown as the head coach and stuff. Like, if that stuff happened with the president there and the owner there to actually answer for these questions, then maybe the fans don't feel that way. But all we have is to see the actions of Leon Rose and to see the words that James Dolan said kind of unsolicited. So like, that's all you got. And I think that's where the fans are. Now, do I think that they're right in feeling that way? I think the reality is, given the build of the Knicks, and as Mike Breen says, where they were initially and to where they are now, I don't think it's unrealistic or unfair to say, at a certain point, man, we got to crack through. Like, the teams that were the ops for the Knicks and their obstacles for getting to the NBA Finals were the Pacers and the Celtics. Those were the teams. The Pacers eliminated the Knicks 2 years in a row. The Celtics were the last Eastern Conference team to win an NBA championship. Last year, they were the reigning Eastern Conference champions. The Celtics also are a great team. They're not going anywhere. At the end of the day, the Pacers lose their star point guard, who's become a Knicks killer, in Tyrese Halliburton, and they shut him down for the entire season. He does not return. The Pacers don't make the playoffs. They have a bunch of changes to the team. The Celtics, now they've had a great season, and they've definitely well overshot whatever, quote unquote gap year expectations we expected from the Celtics this past year. The Celtics are still a team that is still working out the kinks of having Jason Tatum return to the team, and he is still trying to find his form and find the best version of himself. He's playing pretty good, but he's still not playing to the level of Jason Tatum. Like, this guy is a 30-point scorer. This guy is one of the best offensive players in the NBA. One of the best two-way players in the NBA, quite frankly. He hasn't been that guy yet. And that was the team the Knicks beat. That was when they had Drew Holiday and when they had Kristaps Porzingis and when they had Al Horford, guys with championship pedigrees. Now they're playing Schreiermans and Neemias Quedas. They're playing a lot of guys who, credit to them, they're playing great. They've been awesome additions to the team or awesome additions to the rotation. But these are guys that are not seasoned come playoff time. I think it's reasonable to feel like, man, those teams are not the teams that we expected having to face them again in another year. Like, we would have expected that those teams, even if the Knicks beat the Celtics, that they were still going to be a tough matchup next year, and it's still going to be a tough matchup this year. But, oh, man, okay, Knicks got by, but, playing them next year is going to be tough. And, still haven't gotten over the Pacers. You don't got to worry about those same versions of the teams anymore. So I think that's where fans say, all right, well, those teams are out. Why not the Knicks now? Because of the Pistons? All right. Pistons have had a great regular season. This is a team they beat in the postseason last year. I think this is a team that on paper, I think the Knicks fans feel like they have more talent than. Cavs have been a disaster in the playoffs. They have been perennial losers in the playoffs. And then they just added another guy who has had his own playoff struggles in James Harden. So I don't think that is unfair for Knicks fans to put championship aspirations on the team and expectations. In terms of winning a title, I think that's a different story. I think winning a title, now you're talking about facing somebody in the Western Conference. We don't know who they're facing. They're facing the Thunder. I'm a Knicks fan. I hope they do well. I think it's a tall, tall task. I'm not saying it's impossible, but I have no misconceptions about who the Thunder are as an organization, as a team. That's a very tough opponent. If there's anybody else, I think Knicks have a great shot. I do. I'm not going to say it's like a 80-20 shot. I think all those teams would be tough matchups if it's the Spurs, if it's the Rockets, if it's... Lakers have a lot of injuries right now. I don't know how they would get there without Luka and Reeves playing in the first round, but the T-Wolves, if there's any of those teams, the Knicks, they'd have a shot. I'm not saying they would definitely win the Nuggets. I'm saying they would definitely win, but I think that they would have a really good shot. But I don't think it's the worst thing in the world that fans feel like, yeah, it would be disappointing if they don't get to the playoffs and win and get to the end of the NBA Finals. Like, they traded away their future in large part because they thought this team only needed a couple of finishing pieces. If you trade for 5 first-round picks for Mikal Bridges and then you trade for Karl-Anthony Towns, like, okay, we got the what they feel like is one of the best starting lines in the NBA. Excuse me, even though it hasn't really played that way. It's, again, I don't think it's unrealistic or unfair to say, man, we need to get it done at this point in time. The Knicks don't have many other avenues to improve the team in a major way otherwise. So last thing, man, before we get out of here, again, I mentioned this is a huge week for the Knicks. A bunch of big games coming up, but none bigger than the game they have Thursday night when the hated Boston Celtics travel to MSG to take on the New York Knicks. And this is just where things stand right now. The Celtics are still ahead of the Knicks for the number 2 seed. They are 2.5 games back right now. The Knicks are 3 back in the loss column. So Knicks 3 back with 4 to play. I would not feel great about their chances of catching the Celtics. Now, the Knicks would own the tiebreaker if they win this game. So it's not like they necessarily need to overtake the Celtics. All they need to do is have the same record as them. But essentially, the best the Knicks could do right now is to go with 3 games left. I said 4, so 3 games left. With 3 games left, the best they can do is go 54-28. The Celtics, if they can just find a way to, who are they're currently, if I look at their record right now, Celtics right now are currently 53-25. As long as the Celtics can get a couple wins here, they'll be fine. They'll get to 55, and they'll have clinched. I think if they win this game, they also will clinch the number 2 seed. So it's going to be really tough for the Knicks to catch them at this point. But I think this game really goes beyond, I think, whatever we're looking for when it comes to the standings. I think the standings are what they are. The Knicks are unlikely to catch the number 2 seed. Not impossible, but unlikely. I think this is going to be more about, for the last week, and then 2 weeks later, the playoffs begin, not allowing any mental edges to be had by any opponents down the stretch. As much as we talk about how the Knicks lost those 4 games against the Celtics in the last season, and then they beat them in the playoffs, what gets lost is the final game these two teams played, and this was one where Mitchell Robinson got to play a ton. The Knicks actually should have won the game. Like, they didn't foul up 3 points late in the game, and I think Tatum hit a 3 that sent it into overtime late at the Garden, and it felt like the Knicks really kind of gave one away, a game that they should have won. It was a lot different in terms of, like, the feel. The first 3 games were blowouts. The Knicks didn't look like they could compete with the Boston Celtics. The 4th game looked a lot different. It looked a lot more competitive. It looked like kind of what the playoff series ended up looking like, where you were like, okay. I mean, it was devastating to lose that way. It was frustrating, and, Knicks fans were crashing out because, oh, man, we got swept by this freaking team. We can't beat this freaking team. This team that we're almost certainly going to play in the playoffs, this is, over. But I think for the Knicks, I think whatever mental edge that the Celtics had over them, I think was loosened a little bit with that game, because I think the Knicks showed, okay, if we play good basketball, we could definitely be in a position to win a game against this team at least. If you win 1, what's 4? So I think that it helped them in that stretch. I think this is going to be the flip side for the Knicks here. If you're the Knicks, I think you got to come out and have one of your best, if not the best game of the season in this one. I think that you don't want the Celtics to come in and with now Jason Tatum and now them feeling confident. I didn't pull the sound, but Jaylen Brown had basically said that, he's been waiting for this opportunity to right the wrong of losing to the Knicks last year. Remember during the documentary, was the Starting 5 documentary, he said that losing to the Knicks was like death. And that it still bothers him to this day. And then this week, he's like, we wanna run it back against the Knicks. Like they are looking for this opportunity. They're looking for this matchup. So I think with the Knicks, in terms of how they approach this, I don't think you want to give the Celtics any kind of mental edge to make them feel like, oh yeah, we're gonna get them this time around. I think that you want to, regardless if you catch them for the 2 seed, let them understand that, regardless of the standings and regardless of Jason Tatum being back, that this is going to be the same result as it was last year in the playoffs, that you guys are going to get your ass kicked. That's got to be the mantra. That's got to be the mentality. It's a home game. It's one of the, again, of course, one of the last games of the season. The Knicks will finish up this year. You got the Celtics, and then you have the Raptors, I believe. And I don't remember who the last team was. I'm pulling up the schedule one time. And then you got the Hornets. So Celtics, Raptors, Hornets, to close out 3 playoff teams potentially. You know, the Hornets have a playing situation potentially, but the way they're playing, I would be shocked at that in the postseason. So these are important games, and these are all games, by the way, that these games are live. I don't like if teams want to give up a seat in the standings or whatever. That's fine, but these are no longer. We saw that Hawks game because again, the Hawks they're trying to ensure that they don't fall into a play-in situation, right? Like we're no longer in the part of the season where teams are kind of just patty caking around with these regular season games. These regular season games, this is why they put the play-in tournament and why it has worked. These playing games, these games are real. These games are live. Again, for the Celtics, there's a number 2 seed on the line when they play them. If they're gonna play against the Raptors are trying to desperately stay out of the play-in. The Raptors are only a half game up right now on the Sixers as we sit today, entering Tuesday night. That's a live game. Again, the Hornets are in the play-in right now. They have an opportunity to potentially play their way out of the play-in. So the last game of the season, we'll see kind of what's available in the last game of the season in terms of teams moving up and down. But there's a chance that the Hornets could be playing for a chance to get out of the play-in, a chance to maybe avoid the 9 seed where it's a winner-go-home game before you get into a playoff atmosphere play-in kind of game, or a situation where it's a 7-8 seed and they want to get the 7 seed so that first playing game's at home. I mean, there are a lot of things at play right now. So these games are all live and all very important. I think that's why we go back to what Carl Anthony Towns said earlier when he said that essentially, that our playoffs essentially have already started. I think that's how a lot of teams in the Eastern Conference and in the Western Conference feel. And that's how the Knicks need to feel right now. So this is a huge one. I said I will be seated for this one. I actually won't be seated. I'll be on a flight. I'll be flying away because I'll be on my bachelor trip is this week. I actually literally just dawned on me just now that one of the biggest games of next season actually, I don't know if I'll be able to watch. I guess this is on, what is this game, on Prime? Is it on Prime or is it on Peacock? This is, of course now I can't see. This is an Amazon Prime game. I'm screwed. Yeah, it's Prime Video. Oh, well maybe not. It depends. But I have Wi-Fi. That's really going to be the difference whether I can watch this game or not. But either way, yeah, this is no joke at this point in time. This is real. This is all live, and man, this is what it's all about. I love this time of the year. I love the playoff basketball, and it's going to be a fun road here as we cap off the regular season. But that's going to do it, man. This was a fun episode of Orange and Blue Bloods. A little bit longer than I expected it to be. I was yapping a little bit talking about that Hawks game, but it was a great game to watch. Again, I want to thank you guys so much for supporting the show and listening. Of course, if you are watching the show, you want to learn where to find the audio version, just search Orange and Blue Bloods wherever you get your podcasts, and be sure to subscribe and hit auto download. And if you can, give us a 5-star review. That would greatly appreciate it. For those listening, want to know where you can see my beautiful mug, you could, of course, search New Generation Media on YouTube to find the video versions of these episodes. That'll do it for now. Thank you guys so much. This will be the last episode of Orange and Blue Bloods for this week because, again, I will be away for the rest of the week, so there won't be any new recordings, at least not planned. I guess in theory I can always change my mind, but that's not my plan right now. It's to record while I'm on my bachelor's trip. So I will be all fired up and ready to go next week as we get ready for the playoffs. I'm almost certain we'll have some fun guests next week and fun guests as we get to the stretch run of this Knicks season and the playoff push begins. That'll do it for now, though. Thank you guys for checking me out. I'm EJ Stewart. Take it easy.